Amid the bustling crowd on the bright and lively streets of Hollywood Boulevard, a frail man sat hunched on a street corner. His clothes were tattered, his body worn down by the harshness of life. Laughter and hurried footsteps passed him by, as if the world had forgotten his existence. His name was Dave, a homeless man with deep, weary eyes that held countless untold stories. In his hands was a simple cardboard sign, its shaky letters spelling, "Hungry. Please help." The late afternoon sunlight stretched across the street, its golden rays seemingly trying to soothe the chill in his soul. But Dave's heart remained heavy. How long had it been since he had a full meal? Sitting there, he felt invisible, insignificant, like a grain of sand lost in the vastness of life. Every laugh, every glance that skipped over him only deepened his crushing sense of loneliness. But then, as Dave lowered his head, ready to surrender what little hope he had left, a towering figure appeared before him. The man wore a plain black hoodie, his face partially hidden behind sunglasses. He crouched down to Dave's level, his gaze shimmering kindly through the lenses, and spoke in a deep, warm voice. "Hey, buddy, how's it going?" Dave lifted his head, his eyes clouded with surprise. How long had it been since someone stopped to talk to him, much less crouched down to meet him eye to eye? He stammered, "Could be better. I'm just trying to scrape enough together for a meal." The man glanced at the sign in Dave's hands, nodded thoughtfully, then said something unexpected. "How about I do more than that? Let me take care of you today." Dave froze, stunned. He could hardly believe his ears. It was such a simple sentence, yet in that moment, it felt like a ray of light cutting through the darkest night. "Are you serious?" Dave asked, his voice trembling. The man smiled, straightened up, and extended his hand. "Absolutely. Come on, let's get you something to eat. Do you like barbecue?" Dave hesitated, his heart swirling with a mix of emotions, gratitude, apprehension, and disbelief. But when he grasped the man's hand, the warmth and sincerity that radiated from it felt like he was holding on to a new hope. As they walked side by side, Dave was overwhelmed by a feeling he couldn't quite describe. His hand still held onto the lingering warmth from that handshake, as though it had melted away the cold loneliness of his days on the streets. Glancing at the tall stranger beside him, he couldn't help but wonder why someone like this would care about a person like him. "You really don't have to do this," Dave murmured, his voice uncertain. The man chuckled softly, his voice steady and reassuring. "It's no big deal, buddy. Everyone deserves to eat. Trust me, I've been hungry before, and it's not a feeling I'd wish on anyone." Dave was taken aback by those words. He never imagined someone so seemingly successful could understand the pain of hunger. But there was something in the man's tone, so genuine, so devoid of pity, that began to ease the tension in Dave's chest. As they stepped into a small BBQ restaurant with a neon pig sign glowing above the door, the rich aroma of smoked meat and spices filled the air, awakening every one of Dave's senses. His stomach growled softly, but it was loud enough for the man to notice. "Looks like we're in the right place," the man chuckled, giving Dave's shoulder a gentle pat. "Take a seat and order whatever you like. Today's on me." Dave stood frozen in front of the counter, his eyes scanning the menu filled with tempting choices: pulled pork, cornbread, potato salad, and golden mac and cheese. How long had it been since he last had the freedom to choose his own meal? The hesitation was plain on his face. The man leaned down and spoke softly. "No rush. Take your time and pick whatever sounds good. This is your day." Those simple words made Dave's heart tremble. He took a deep breath, trying to contain the emotions welling up inside him. "Well, I'll go with the pulled pork sandwich and mac and cheese," Dave said, his voice trembling. The man burst into laughter. "Great choice, but let me add a few more things. We need some cornbread and a little salad. This is a celebration, isn't it?" The cashier behind the counter widened her eyes, staring at the man with disbelief before exclaiming, "Oh my gosh, are you Shaquille O'Neal?" Dave turned his head sharply, his eyes widening in shock. That's when he realized that the man helping him wasn't just kind-hearted. He was a legendary basketball star. Stammering, Dave said, "You're Shaq. You're really Shaq?" Shaq smiled warmly and nodded. "That's me, but today, I'm just your buddy. Don't worry, Dave. We're just having a meal like anyone else." They sat down, and the food arrived quickly. When Dave picked up the warm pulled pork sandwich, his hands trembled slightly. The first bite was like a wave of emotions washing over him. The sweet, smoky flavor of the meat, the creamy richness of the mac and cheese, and the perfectly balanced spices in every bite. "This is amazing," Dave murmured, his voice catching in his throat as his eyes welled up. It had been so long since he'd had a proper meal, let alone one as delicious as this. Shaq nodded, taking a bite of his ribs. "I told you, BBQ never disappoints." Amid the soft hum of laughter in the restaurant and the curious glances of other patrons, Dave felt something he hadn't in years. The feeling of being human, of being valued and seen. As the meal came to an end, Dave leaned back in his chair, savoring a sense of satisfaction and lightness he thought he'd forgotten. The clean plates on the table were a testament not just to the delicious food, but to the kindness that had nourished his soul. He turned to Shaq, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you so much," Dave said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I don't even know how to express what I'm feeling." Shaq raised his hand and shook his head gently. "No need to thank me, buddy. We all need a little help on tough days." Dave lowered his head, his hands clasped tightly together as if he were trying to hold back tears. Before the moment became too heavy, Shaq leaned forward, his eyes lighting up as if he had just thought of something exciting. "Dave, how about we make you feel even better? A meal is just the start. I think it's time for a little makeover. What do you say? A haircut, a shave, maybe a little something to help you feel more confident." Dave was stunned, almost laughing at the unexpected suggestion. He glanced down at his tattered clothes, dirty hands, and unkempt hair, shaking his head in embarrassment. "Shaq, I don't think a place like that would take someone like me." Shaq stopped, placing his large hand firmly yet warmly on Dave's shoulder. His eyes were serious but filled with compassion. "Don't ever say that, Dave. Everyone deserves to feel good about themselves no matter who they are. You are you, and that's more than enough." Those words, though simple, struck a deep chord in Dave. His eyes welled up, and for the first time in years, he felt like he mattered. Not because of how he looked or where he was in life, but simply for being himself. They left the restaurant and strolled through the busy streets. The glow from shop windows and neon signs reflected off the glass storefronts, creating a world that felt entirely different from the corner where Dave had been sitting earlier. Shaq pointed to a sleek modern building with large glass windows. "Here we are. Let's head inside." Dave froze, his eyes wide as he stared at the upscale spa before him. He shook his head, his voice trembling. "No, a place like this isn't for someone like me." Shaq turned back, looking Dave straight in the eye, his voice firm yet gentle. "This place is for anyone who needs it, and today that's you. Trust me." As they entered, the receptionist behind the desk looked up, her eyes widening in astonishment as she recognized Shaq. "Oh my goodness, Shaquille O'Neal?" she exclaimed, almost unable to believe her eyes. Shaq laughed heartily, raising a hand in acknowledgement. "That's me. But today, I'm here for my friend. He needs a fresh start. A haircut, a shave, and a good wash. Can you help him feel amazing?" The receptionist smiled warmly, her gaze softening as she looked at Dave. "We'd be happy to take care of him," she said gently. Dave, feeling self-conscious, followed a stylist to the back. As they began cutting away his tangled hair and washing off layers of grime, he closed his eyes, letting the warm water soothe his body and spirit. Each snip of the scissors, Each drop of water felt like it was washing away not just the dirt, but also the weight of the sorrow he had carried for so long. For the first time in years, Dave looked into the mirror and didn't recognize himself. His face was clean-shaven, and his hair was neat and tidy. He felt like a new person. When he stepped out of the spa area, Shaq was waiting for him, a radiant smile on his face. "Look at you!" Shaq exclaimed, throwing his arms wide. "Hollywood's going to be calling any day now." Dave chuckled, a genuine laugh breaking through his normally reserved demeanor. For the first time in a long time, he felt pride in his reflection and gratitude for someone who believed in him. Dave laughed, feeling whole for the first time in years. "Thank you, Shaq. I never thought I could feel like this." Shaq patted him lightly on the shoulder, his eyes filled with encouragement. "This is just the beginning, my friend. We've got more work to do." As Dave stepped out of the spa, he felt a strange yet uplifting sense of excitement. Each step he took seemed lighter, unburdened by the weight of insecurity or the judgmental gazes of strangers. The clean clothes hugged his body, fitting him perfectly and offering a comforting warmth. His face, now clean-shaven and framed by neat hair, shone with a brightness he hadn't seen in years. Inside him, a small flame began to reignite, the flame of confidence he thought he had lost forever. Shaq stood beside him, his face glowing with pride as he admired Dave's transformation. He gave Dave a playful pat on the shoulder and said, half jokingly yet sincerely, "My man, if I were a casting director, I'd sign you up right now. But before we think about Hollywood, we've got one more thing to do." Dave frowned slightly, his curiosity piqued. He already felt like he'd received more than he ever dared to dream of in a single day. Yet, under Shaq's sincere gaze, he couldn't bring himself to refuse. "What's next?" Dave asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. Shaq laughed heartily and motioned for Dave to follow him. "Shopping, my friend. With this new look, you need a fresh wardrobe to match. Trust me, a good outfit can completely change how you see yourself." Dave stopped for a moment, glancing down at the worn-out shoes he'd been wearing for years, then at the clean sneakers Shaq had given him at the spa. He pressed his lips together, his emotions a mix of happiness and unease. "Shaq, you've already done so much for me. I can't let you keep doing this." Shaq paused, turning to look directly at Dave. His eyes were gentle but firm. "Dave, I'm doing this because I want to. Life has been kind to me, and I believe that if I can help someone feel better about themselves, I shouldn't hesitate. Don't think of this as something you owe me. Instead, think of today as the day you're being given a new chance." Those words were like a cool breeze sweeping through Dave's soul, calming the anxieties that had been swirling within him. Slowly, he nodded and followed Shaq, his heart filled with an overwhelming sense of gratitude. At the clothing store, Shaq handed Dave a shopping basket with a mischievous grin. "All right, my friend, pick whatever you need. Don't worry about the price. Today's all about you." Dave stood frozen, unable to comprehend how he'd ended up in such a place. He'd never imagined himself walking into a store like this, much less being free to choose whatever he wanted. Carefully, he began picking items: a crisp button-down shirt, a well-fitting pair of jeans, and a pair of warm socks. Yet, Shaq's eyes remained unsatisfied. "You've got to add a few more things. This jacket, that backpack, and these shoes, they're all perfect for you," Shaq said, piling additional items into the basket as he spoke. Dave felt a lump forming in his throat as he looked at the basket now brimming with new clothes. He clenched his hands tightly, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall in front of everyone. "I don't know what to say," Dave said, his voice trembling. Shaq smiled, his eyes radiating warmth. "Don't say anything. Just promise me one thing. When you're back on your feet, help someone else, just like I helped you today." Those words struck deep into Dave's heart. He felt as though he had been given more than just new clothes. He had been entrusted with a mission to become a better version of himself and to spread kindness to others. As they left the store, Dave walked with a bag of clothes in his hand and a heart full of hope. Each step felt stronger, more confident, and the looks he received from passers-by were no longer filled with disdain, but with recognition. "How are you feeling?" Shaq asked, his warm smile never leaving his face. Dave turned to him, his eyes shining with profound gratitude. "I feel like a completely new person." Shaq laughed, patting Dave on the shoulder once more. "Well then, get ready. This is just the beginning. We've got a lot more to do." Dave stepped out of the shopping center, clutching the bag tightly. But the most valuable thing he carried wasn't the new clothes or shoes he had just bought. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a very long time: hope. As the streetlights began to glow and they walked through the bustling crowd, Dave felt like the world around him was warmer, more compassionate than ever before. Shaq glanced at Dave, his friendly smile unwavering. "So, are you ready for the next step?" Dave stopped, turning to look at Shaq, his eyes filled with curiosity. "The next step? What do you mean?" Shaq tilted his head slightly, his voice turning serious yet still filled with emotion. "You need a place to call home, and I know just the right place to help you start over. Not just a roof over your head, but a place with people who understand and can support you." Dave froze. Those words reached into the deepest part of his soul. A place to call home, something he thought had been lost to him forever. He didn't know how to respond. He simply lowered his head, his shoulders trembling slightly. Shaq placed a reassuring hand on Dave's shoulder, his voice warmer than ever. "You're not alone, Dave. Life can be full of challenges, but there will always be hands willing to lift you up. You just have to take that step forward." The place Shaq brought Dave to exuded a sense of warmth and comfort. The light from inside seemed to glow with safety and hope. A middle-aged woman with a gentle smile stepped out to greet them. "This is Dave," Shaq said, his eyes filled with trust as he looked at the woman. "He needs a fresh start, and I think this is the perfect place for him." The woman nodded and stepped closer to Dave, her eyes brimming with empathy. "Welcome, Dave. We're here to help you." Dave lowered his head again, overcome with emotion. He couldn't find the words to express what he felt. He simply nodded quietly, a gesture of acceptance and gratitude that didn't need to be spoken aloud. Shaq patted Dave on the shoulder one last time, his gaze bright but carrying a hint of seriousness. "Dave, I need you to promise me something." Dave lifted his head, his eyes filled with curiosity. "Anything you ask, just say it," Dave replied, his voice trembling slightly. Shaq looked straight into Dave's eyes, his voice deep and steady, as if every word he spoke carried the weight of genuine sincerity. "When you get back on your feet, when you can take care of yourself, I want you to help someone else. Just like I've helped you today. This isn't about owing me or anyone else. It's about how we can all work together to make the world a better place." Dave was silent, those words touching the deepest corners of his soul. He thought about the dark days he had spent in loneliness and despair. Without Shaq, he might still be sitting on that street corner, uncertain of what tomorrow would bring. "I promise," Dave said, his voice more resolute than ever. "I'll never forget what you've done for me, and I'll help others whenever I can." Shaq smiled, his eyes glowing with pride. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card, handing it to Dave. "This is my number. If you need anything else, call me. But remember, this journey is yours. I've helped you start, but the rest is up to you." Dave took the card, clutching it tightly in his hand like a precious treasure. He couldn't hold back his tears, but this time, they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of profound gratitude. As Dave watched Shaq's towering figure fade into the distance, a new feeling blossomed within him. Faith. Faith not only in himself, but also in the kindness of humanity and the opportunities life could offer if one didn't give up hope. Shaq had given Dave more than just a meal, new clothes, or a place to stay. The most valuable gift he had given was the strength to believe in himself and a brighter future. Dave woke up in a small room at the support center, soft light streaming through the window and bringing with it the warmth of a new day. For the first time in years, he didn't wake up on a cold sidewalk or in fear of being chased away. The peace he felt was almost unfamiliar. Sitting up, he looked around the simple yet tidy room, and a surge of hope filled his heart. A hope he hadn't dared to dream of before. Under the guidance of the people at the center, Dave began attending counseling sessions and skill-building workshops. In the early days, he felt awkward and insecure, but the memory of Shaq and his words of encouragement kept pushing him forward. Each passing day, he felt like he was slowly reclaiming not only his skills, but also his confidence. A month later, Dave secured a part-time job at a local coffee shop. The moment he was handed his first apron, he felt as though he had achieved something monumental. The first dollars he earned weren't just a way to pay his bills. They were a symbol of rebirth, the start of a new life unfolding before him. One evening, as Dave held his first paycheck in his hands, he sat quietly on his bed, his gaze falling on the card Shaq had given him. On it were simple yet powerful words. "If you need anything, call me." Dave clutched the card tightly, his heart swelling with emotion. He remembered the promise he made to Shaq. "When you get back on your feet, help someone else." Those words echoed in his mind, like a guiding light. He told himself, "It's time to keep my promise." One morning, on his way to work, Dave noticed a middle-aged man sitting on the corner of the street. The man looked weary and broken, his eyes filled with sadness, so much like Dave had been just months ago. Dave stopped, gazing at the man, and a memory flooded back. The moment Shaq had knelt beside him, smiling warmly and speaking those simple yet life-changing words. "Hey, buddy, how's it going?" Taking a deep breath, Dave stepped forward and repeated the same words. The man looked up, his eyes wide with surprise. Dave sat down beside him, listening to his story and feeling the pain that he understood all too well. Not long after, Dave brought the man to the coffee shop where he worked. Using his own money, Dave bought him breakfast and sat with him as he ate. In the man's eyes and words, Dave began to see something shift, a glimmer of hope, the same feeling Shaq had once given him. But Dave didn't stop there. He took the man to the support center where he himself had found help, believing that this place could offer the man the same second chance it had given him. As time passed, Dave not only stood firmly on his own 2 feet, but also found purpose in helping others. He became a volunteer at the support center, the very place where he had once sought refuge. One day, while assisting a young homeless man in finding a job, Dave received an unexpected phone call. A deep, familiar voice spoke on the other end. "Dave, my friend, I've heard you're doing great things. I'm proud of you." Dave immediately recognized Shaq's voice. Smiling, his own voice trembled slightly as he replied, "Thank you, Shaq. I'm just trying to keep my promise." Shaq laughed heartily. "You're doing far more than keeping a promise, my friend. You're making a difference, and that's the greatest thing of all." Dave gazed out the window, his eyes filled with optimism. From a homeless man once lost in despair, he had become someone who could give hope to others, just as he had once received it. Shaq's act of kindness didn't just transform Dave's life. It created a ripple effect, spreading goodness to countless others. And so, what began as a single dollar of hope had grown into an endless source of inspiration, changing not just one life, but an entire community. Sometimes, all it takes is one small act of kindness to spark a chain reaction. Shaq didn't just offer Dave a meal or clean clothes. He gave him something far greater: hope. Hope that life could change. Hope that struggles don't last forever. And hope that compassion can light up even the darkest corners of our world. But here's the thing. This story isn't just about Shaq or Dave. It's about all of us. Each of us has the power to make a difference, no matter how small the gesture may seem. So, the next time you see someone who might be struggling, remember, a smile, a kind word, or even a moment of your time could change their life in ways you can't imagine. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs a reminder of the good in the world. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of the power of human connection. Together, we can create a ripple effect of kindness. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.